Republicans want to do another tax cut for the ultra-wealthy, which Congress's nonpartisan budget scorers say is going to cost $4.6 trillion this time. Now, congressional Republicans say they care about the deficit, so they have a plan to fix things up. Repeal math. Here's their story. Because they already had 8 years of tax cuts that ran up the debt, congressional Republicans claim that 10 more years of tax cuts will be free. They named this gimmick the current policy baseline. They should have named it magic math. It is so nuts that when we need to figure out the cost of tax cuts, the Senate has never switched to it over using real math. Now, Dr. Faulkender, if confirmed, you will play a role in whatever tax deal the Republicans put together. So let's talk about math, magic math and real math. Dr. Faulkender, does renaming tax cuts produce any additional revenue?
Does renaming them?
Yes. Calling them something different. Does that produce any additional revenue?
I don't think renaming something changes. If it changes behavior, it has the potential to change revenues.
Wait, so are you saying renaming tax cuts produces additional revenue? Just renaming it?
I can't imagine that it would unless it causes people to behave differently.
Okay, I'll take that as no. Fair enough. Claiming that somehow losing $4.6 trillion in tax revenues is free is just plain nuts. Congressional Republicans are hoping they can fool people long enough to deliver giveaways to their wealthy donors before anyone figures it out. But at the end of the day, Republicans cannot repeal math. A bunch of tax cuts for billionaires will cost $4.6 trillion. But congressional Republicans don't like that answer. So I'm wondering, if they love magic math so much, I want to ask the same question in reverse. If the Republicans' idea of magically not counting the cost of tax cuts for billionaires makes sense, what about not counting the cost of tax cuts for ordinary people? That is, for extending the child tax credit. Dr. Faulkender, according to Republicans' magic math, if extending the tax cuts is free, shouldn't extending a temporary expansion of the child tax credit also be free?
Thank you, Senator. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act increased the child tax credit from $1,000 to $2,000. Yep. And so if we allow the tax cut to expire, it would mean that the child tax credit would go back to the $1,000.
Right. So the question I'm asking, using Republican magic math, if it is free to extend tax cuts for billionaires, isn't it also free to extend tax cuts for poor kids?
Senator, I'm not familiar with magic math. What I do know is that the American people look at the current tax code, what they paid last year and what they paid this year, as the current environment. Yeah, and so the question is, when we talk about extending it, I would argue that extending the TCJA is making sure that the American people don't incur a $4.5 trillion tax increase.
So you do think that renaming the tax cuts will produce $4.5 trillion in revenue?
No, Senator, I didn't say that it had any impact on the bottom line deficit. I'm just saying, when you ask me what a baseline is, to me the baseline is what I'm currently doing.
I'm not asking you that. I'm asking you what it costs to put in $4.5 trillion in tax cuts. Look, if Republican magic math works, then why not extend it to everything we spend money on? How about money we spent last year on roads and bridges, or child care subsidies and the workers who process Social Security checks? Of course not. No one is going to do that. Congressional Republicans want to use magic math to pass giant tax cuts and then try to tell the American people those tax cuts cost nothing. Hardworking Americans understand that $4.6 trillion for a billionaire tax cut is not free. Congressional Republicans are trying to sell magic math so they can help billionaires. And fortunately, the American people are just not buying that.